Ireland, mythical, magical, mystical. A Guide to Hidden Ireland. The Hidden Gems Series. By Christy Nicholas. Part 2 of 4. The Personal Facet, Friendly Folk. The people of Ireland are the jewel in the crown of the Emerald Isle. Their hospitality is legendary, and they're deeply rooted in their history and traditions. Their odd mix of dour and cheerful can baffle the most intrigued psychologist, and yet, you cannot help but feel energized and optimistic after having a pint with one. The Irish do love their misery, and history has dealt them with many loads of it, yet they still come out fighting, drinking, and singing at the end of the day. What is the secret behind this eternal buoyancy? I think the Irish, in general, your mileage may vary, are a practical people, but with one foot always firmly set in their dreams. While they can work and toil all their lives to keep their traditions alive, their food on the table, their Guinness in their glass, they will sing songs of lament, joy, and love in the same breath. They will put out dishes of milk for the fair folk they profess would be foolish to believe in. They build roads around a hawthorn tree rather than uproot it. They leave their own crowded pubs to give a stranger a lift home on a blustery night. They take a day off of work just to show someone around their corner of the island. I shall tell you some stories of Irish hospitality. Some are short, some are long. Some are astounding, some are just sweet. All are true. Real estate angel. When my friend, Sarah, and her aunt were in Galway, they got into a real estate conversation with a total stranger in a bar. By the time they had to leave, the agent had given them his email and address, as well as the name, email, and address of a friend who was an estate agent, whom they should call if they were interested in purchasing a home in Ireland. Blustery nights in Inishmore. My friend, Vicky, and I were on vacation in Ireland in May 2011. I had previously done a day trip, 2006, to the island Inishmore and wanted to stay longer, so we rented the Man of Éire cottage for 2 nights. It was a gloomy, rainy morning, lowering clouds and a bit depressing. We took the ferry over and huddled with the masses of soggy tourists, trying to figure out a lift to our B&B, which was on the center of the island. We finally persuaded a shuttle bus to take us over, and we settled in nicely in our warm, dry, clean room. The cottage is a charmingly restored thatched cottage with a peat fire. It had been used in the film Men of Éire, a 1934 film about life on the island. Our room, number 5, was in the next building, recently renovated with wood floors, a decent-sized room with a window overlooking the water, and a rather tiny bathroom. By tiny, I mean by US standards, it was quite normal by European standards. Vicky was feeling tired after our long journey, so I went out to chat with Maura, one of the owners, and explore a bit. She told me Joe Waddy's, a pub I was looking forward to visiting, served food from about 6 p.m. to 8:30 p.m., and I was starting to get stir-crazy by then. I didn't travel 3,000 miles to stay caged in the B&B. So, when the sun started burning through a bit, I donned my rain poncho and went walking to the nearby shops. I wandered into Nan Fatty's cafe to find a warm, welcoming, toasty fireplace, hot vegetable soup on the menu, and a seat near the fire waiting for me. Jeff, the organizer of a group of 40 visitors from Dublin, entered after a while and extended an invitation to join them at Joe Waddy's later, even giving me his cell number. Since I was planning on going to the pub anyhow, I told him this would be great. With Vicky feeling tired, I wanted to have someone I knew already there. While I don't mind going in blind, it's much nicer if there is at least one person you've met before. I headed back to the B&B. There was no rain for the first couple of minutes, and then it returned with a vengeance. When I got back to the room, Vicky was happily playing on her iPad. I set my clothes and jacket on the radiator to dry. This is when the sun decided to come out and start shining through, even revealing some lovely, much-missed brilliant blue patches in the sky. I decided to take advantage of the unusual weather and set out to walk the 4.5 miles to Joe Waddy's. I could have called a taxi, but I wanted to absorb this rare sunshine. Since my sneakers were soaked, I put on my other shoes and started out. The walk was long and windy, up and down hills, in and out of sun and rain. I saw several folks driving, another walker, and a biker. Along the route I also saw 2 donkeys, about a dozen chickens, several horses, and a gang of young hostelers. When I got to Joe's, I saw several tables marked reserved and concluded this is where Jeff's group was planning on sitting, but no one I knew was there yet. I went up to the bar, ordered myself a pint of cider and a smoked mackerel salad. The smoky, salty flavor of the fish worked perfectly with the sweet balsamic dressing. It was delicious. There was a match on television, and everyone was very excited about it. Leinster was playing, and they won. This was evidently a good thing, judging by the cheering and other reactions. I'm rather a dunce about sports, but the mood was infectious. Jeff and his crowd started trickling in a bit later. They were all part of a group called New and Not So New in Dublin, a social group which does all sorts of meetups and gatherings. I sat with and talked with several people. Fernando, who was from Mexico and just moved to Dublin a short while ago. Maria was originally from Belgium. Jeff, the social butterfly, flitted from group to group. Louisa, who had a huge plate of stone crab claws, and was somewhat apprehensive about being able to get them open. Ken looked like a younger version of Ian McShane and was an accountant like me. Declan had lived in Thailand for a year teaching English and was about to embark on the same job in Barcelona. Declan and I both loved trivia and history, so we chatted about gaming, films, history, and many other subjects. After everyone finished their dinner, the pints started flowing. The singer started up, we all danced and sang to songs like The Gambler, Country Roads. Really? Is West Virginia so popular in Ireland? Piano Man, With or Without You, Daydream Believer, Fields of Athenry, Molly Malone, Stuck in the Middle with You, Galway Girl, etc. The place was now packed, with at least one hen party, bachelorette party, several groups of guys, and a couple of outright stumbling drunks. I went outside for some cooler air, as the wind was still whipping about with bits of rain. There was a pub dog playing fetch with whoever was willing to throw the straw. We couldn't find a proper stick for him. The wind was raw and wild, so it drove me back inside for more fun. As it neared 11, I decided to find a lift back to the cottage. I didn't want to get stuck walking back in that weather. I made my way through the dancing crowd to the bar and asked one of the girls to ring up a taxi for me. When I went outside, an older guy in a blue van was there, one who had refused us earlier in the day. He wanted €15 for a 5-mile drive. I thought perhaps he wanted to haggle, so I offered €5. I had been told €5 was normal. He said €5 wasn't even going to pay for the petrol. Now shut the door, the weather is coming in. Well, I went back into the pub and asked the girl if this was really the going rate, or was he trying to gouge me. PJ, the owner of the bar, heard me and got very upset. He said it was a ridiculous sum and he'd take me himself. Now, the pub was stuffed with people. He had a great staff, but for him to leave his own pub in the middle of a Saturday night crowd just to take a tourist home was incredible. He was livid about the taxi driver and wanted to make sure this wasn't the impression I took away about Irish hospitality. PJ, you more than made up for that man's attempt to gouge the tourist. Your kindness and help is what I will remember and pass on to everyone who will listen. Thank you. I am very glad I didn't attempt the walk back, as it was by now pitch black, and there was no light on the route. I would have used up what was left of my cell phone charge to try to see and not stumble on some unsuspecting donkey or tumble over a dry mortar wall. So this was my very long story of a blustery, cold, dark night on an Irish island, and a kind, chivalric pub owner named PJ who wiped out the rude antics of the gouging taxi driver. The hitchhiker. Back on my 2006 visit, my 2 girlfriends and I were driving around our second day in Ireland. We were exploring the Boyne and had stopped at Kilnaboy Church. Next, we headed to Caherconnell, but not without first picking up a hitchhiker. Yes, we know, it was dangerous. But he was a little old man about 70 years old, and there were 3 of us. Teresa was a police officer and she said she could handle him, so we invited him in for a ride. His name was John Rafferty, and he was from Edinburgh. He was there, walking the lands where his father came from many years ago. He was on his way to Doolin, so we took him as far as we were going, which wasn't very far, unfortunately. It perhaps saved him a half-hour walk, but we did our good deed for the day. He was a very sweet man and entertained us with a couple short stories during our ride. We felt well paid. The jaunting car. When visiting the Gap of Dunloe in 2006, my 2 girlfriends and I drove up the narrow road and found Kate Kearney's cottage. It was about 4 p.m., so we talked to some folks about taking a jaunting cart up the Gap. We so lucked out. We got Tim O'Connell and his horse Harry. Teresa and I took the cart, but the carts made Kim nervous, so she opted to ride another of Tim's horses, Susie. What a trip! Tim was chatty and incredibly nice. He lived in the Gap, as did most of his family, and he'd been doing this most of his life. He owned 5 horses, and his father and grandfather had been doing this as well. We passed his grandmother's cottage, which was called Colleen Bown. In Irish it means white girl, which is an old term for a witch or a healer. Since tourists usually travel to Ireland in the winter, he usually works in Amsterdam during this time. Kim had fun staying on the English saddle, no pommel to hold on to, and she had several conversations with Susie about where she wanted to go. Eventually she won the conversations, but it was iffy for a while, especially as Susie passed her home. It was a fabulous trip, and the visions and company were both incredible. When we got back, we remembered we had 2 apples in the car, so we went to fetch those for our hardworking horses. Then we went into Kate Kearney's for some touristy shopping, music, pints, and dinner. Our earlier jaunting cart experience at Macross House was much less enjoyable. The scenery and the trip itself were fine, but the host droned on a memorized spiel and was much less interesting and personable than Tim. We looked Tim up again when I visited in 2011, but he happened to have the day off, so we walked the Gap instead. The photo card. In 2006, I was in Killarney, and my travel companion, Teresa, needed to transfer the photos from her data card to a CD. We found a shop. To this right across from Danny Mann's pub. The guy was very helpful and made sure they were done right. We went to check our email at a nearby internet cafe while we waited. Going back to the photo place, the guy, Tom, couldn't get the larger card to read, so he asked if he could do so overnight off-site. We said we'd be back tomorrow to pick it up. Since Teresa was still interested in afternoon tea, we asked if there was any place nearby. He suggested Jam's around the corner, but it looked more like a cafe than a place for a formal afternoon tea. Teresa's card wasn't completed yet the next morning at the photo store in Killarney, so he told her he'd leave it at the pub across the street if we got there after he closed. Such trust. She hadn't even paid him yet. After a day of sightseeing around the Ring of Kerry, we stopped in at the pub Tom had indicated. He was waiting at the pub to give Teresa her CD. He wanted to make sure she got it all right, which was very kind. He said he didn't feel right leaving it since it also included her memory card. The case of the missing mattress. In 2002, I visited Ireland with my husband and my parents. We had a week-long stay at Knockduffer Abbey, a renovated 14th-century abbey about 20 minutes south of Kilkenny. After a very long day of travel across the Atlantic, through London, into Dublin, and a 3-hour drive, we finally made it to Knockduffer Abbey around 10:30 a.m., utterly exhausted and ready for bed. We went to our cabin, which was one of a row of 6 attached to the main manor house of the converted abbey. Ours was number 12, the second one down, and it had 2 bathrooms and 2 bedrooms upstairs, a living room/dining room, and a kitchen downstairs. The steps were very shallow and difficult to get up and down, especially as Mom has bad knees. However, after a little settling in, all of us slept soundly and long into the morning. Dad had planned on sleeping on the pull-out couch downstairs, but discovered the mattress was inexplicably missing, so I believe Mom offered to sleep on the couch itself, while Dad had the upstairs bedroom to himself. They both sleep with CPAP machines and are used to separate beds. I think we were all finally up around 10 a.m. the next morning, refreshed, showered, and dressed. We decided today would be a relax and recover day and went into the office to speak with Derek. Derek was flabbergasted someone would steal the pull-out couch mattress and offered to find another for us. In the meantime, though, he mentioned he had an upstairs suite in the main house wasn't being rented all week. Would we like to use this room? Jason and I said sure, the matter was closed. We moved our stuff up to the third floor, second floor in Ireland, suite, which was a large efficiency-style room with 2 beds, a living area, a small kitchenette, and a bathroom. This way Mom and Dad each had their own room, and we had our own suite. Everyone was happy. Especially me, as Derek allowed us to use the extra room at absolutely no extra charge. What service? Nancy's Bar. Ardara in County Donegal was my favorite town on this trip. There isn't one reason which sticks out as to why it's my favorite, it just seems to be a conglomeration of all the little reasons. It's not a large place, just one main street through town with perhaps a dozen pubs and restaurants. It's near the sea, and has some fantastic sights nearby, with mountains in the distance. The people were all incredibly friendly, and I could easily move there someday. I felt at home, more than that, I felt part of the family. Since the wind was howling and the sky was weeping most of the day, especially the latter half, we were well wearied and weathered, so decided to find some warming beverages and filling food. Our hostess at the Bayview Guest House, Marion, recommended Nancy's Bar, and mentioned there was an event going on this night. When we arrived, it was certainly crowded. When inquiring about food, we were told they weren't serving that night because of the event, but we could try the Heritage Bar. Heritage Bar wasn't serving, so we ended up with a lovely meal at the Nesbitt Arms. The next evening, we decided to try Nancy's again, and as we reached the door, a thin young man named Angus insisted we come right in. He mentioned my hair was fabulous, he was rather fabulous himself, which we didn't expect in such a small town in the wilds of West Ireland, and introduced us to Daniel and Michael, who were sitting at the bar. He said Daniel was a fantastic cook, and therefore with my glorious hair, we would make a great couple, certainly anyone could see the logic there. We settled down at a table, ordered pints and a ploughman's lunch of cheese, pickle, and bread for a late-night snack. In the course of our dinner, we chatted with the men at the bar, who were quite nice, despite Angus' matchmaking attempts. Angus was apparently quite drunk and left shortly thereafter. He evidently was a star at the event the night before, dressing up as the toucan from the Guinness ads. We enjoyed the food, it had some nice cheddar and brie, and Vicky and I fought over the bits of delicious, sweet pickle relish. A bit fell off the plate, thou shalt not waste the pickle. We all had a lovely conversation about politics, economics, music, etc. with everyone, perhaps a total of 8 people including us. The place was much less crowded than the evening before. It turned out Daniel was a cook at the pub but was off for the evening. He was one of the sons of the owners, and Michael was a cousin. There were 6 children, I think, and most of them worked in the pub in some way or another. It had been in the family for 3 or 4 generations and was a very welcoming place. The next day, after some explorations in the area, we went into Nancy's for an early dinner, or a late afternoon meal, whatever you like. I had the special, a plate of steamed mussels, while Vicky stuck with seafood chowder. The mussels were fresh and very tender, and the brown bread was soft and yummy. If Daniel was the cook today, he was quite good. While we were eating and catching up on our impressions of the day, one of the sisters came in with her son, Simon. We chatted with her a bit about the family. Nancy's was a bit fuller that night, as there was a large group of French tourists in the second room having dinner. One man talked very loudly, and I could hear him over everyone else, but of course I understood none of what he said, except it sounded like the worst over-exaggerated French accent I'd ever heard. I met a girl named Lauren at the bar. She was trying to read her book and I kept pestering her. She turned out to be quite nice about it all, and we talked about books, history, music, and the local people. She likes science fiction as I do, and had read the Outlander books, Narnia, etc. I showed her some of the jewelry pieces I made and brought to show off to folks, and she was duly impressed. She worked as a server at a nearby restaurant and of course knew everyone who worked here. She called it a love/hate relationship. We alternated rounds, and I bought a pint for Alan the bartender when he was done with his shift, so he joined us. He bought me a bottle of cider while I was in the ladies' room, so I drank 3 bottles in total, probably a bit too much. Good thing the B&B only staggering distance away. We all chatted about the Queen's visit to Ireland that day, and how no one thought Northern Ireland would ever join the Republic of Ireland, at least not in their lifetimes. We talked about the fires which had been coursing through County Donegal a couple weeks before, and the life in a small town in Ireland. Alan ended up buying a pair of my earrings for his mother, who loved them. This was a sweet gesture. The place really made me feel as if I was part of the family. I can't wait to go back someday. When I left, the owner made sure my B&B was close by and I could get home all right. He offered to drive me there, but I was confident I could make the half-mile without problems, as I had talked a lot and drank little in the last hour or so. Nancy's is a place I will always feel welcomed and at home, and I look forward to my next visit. There will be a next visit, someday. The musical facet, of song and dance. Ah, the power of song, the joy of the dance. There is something universal about music, something which transcends language, culture, and prejudice. It is something which sings to our very souls. Perhaps, in some far, distant future, humankind will have a true universal language, and it will be musical in nature. In the meantime, we listen to the songs of the Fae, the ballads of the bards, for our joyful journeys. And who does this better than the Irish? Yes, every culture has music in their history, but the Irish seem to embrace it more strongly than others. They are taught, at a young age, to sing, to dance, to play, with very few exceptions. While not all have the talent to pursue it as a career, most Irish people can at least tell a good tale, another ancient bardic art. Let us explore this phrase, the bardic arts. A bard was a type of druid. Druids were the priestly class in pagan Ireland for millennia. The bard told the tales, either in song or in story, of the history, myths, and legends of the people. These tales taught manners, customs, and sometimes harsh lessons. They taught of the consequences of rudeness, the folly and impetuousness of the young, and the wisdom of the aged. They stirred the blood with tales of heroism, of love, of death, and of war. Sometimes all in one tale. The history of the last generation became the legends of the next, and those faded into the myths of the next. But they remain an integral part of the musical tradition of the Emerald Isle, and to fully appreciate their importance, you should familiarize yourself with some of the basics before you travel to this musical, magical land. Types of music. There are 4 main types of music in Irish tradition: early Irish, traditional or folk, classical, and popular. There are, of course, mutations, fusions, and crossovers in all these traditions, but when classifying such a rich tapestry of types, broad strokes must be used. Early Irish. A bard was a much respected member of the medieval Irish court, and as such, details of their lives were written in the official records. Thus, we have many accounts of musicians' travails, lives, and deaths going back over 1,000 years in the historical records. Alas, their music usually did not survive the ages. However, it is thought several of them traveled to other lands, bringing the music of Ireland abroad, and perhaps sowing the musical seeds of the people in other places. About 400 years ago, this tradition of court-sponsored bards started dying out, and the last great bard, Tullow O'Carolan, lived in the latter part of the 17th century and the beginning of the 18th. Many of his harp tunes have survived, are played by modern folk musicians to this very day and are considered a true heritage of Irish music. There were other musicians of this time, pipers, poets, and such, but O'Carolan is considered the last true harper of the realm. He was blind, and it was rumored he had spent some time in the fairy realm, learning their music and sharing it with our world. Commonly heard covered by modern musicians are tunes such as Eleanor Plunkett, The Merry Maids of Connaught, She Beg, She More, or Carolyn's Ramble to Cashel. Traditional music, folk music, includes many styles of song. They can be drinking songs, dancing songs, laments or ballads, and can be sung, played, or both. They can be reels, hornpipes, or jigs, and can be played with many instruments, including uilleann pipes, flutes, and fiddles. There is a style of poetic songs called sean nós, or Old Style, which is usually used for laments and ballads. Sean nós also includes singing but without musical accompaniment. A céilí, a name for an Irish dance party, would be held at someone's house or barn, and people would come of an evening in music, dance, and socialize. Most people would know many of the songs from childhood, and when folk had little money, entertainment was precious. A revival in traditional music occurred after the Irish emigration to many countries, such as the USA, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand. Several bands in the 1960s brought this revival to the forefront, such as the Chieftains, the Clancy Brothers and Tommy Makem, the Wolfe Tones, the Dubliners, and the Irish Rovers, Christy Moore and Planxty, and the Bothy Band. I remember my mother had an album by the Irish Rovers, The Unicorn. And, of course, I can't remember a time when I didn't know every song on that album by heart. In the 1970s and 80s, more traditional bands came into the mainstream, fueling America's love for the folk tunes their parents and grandparents had known. Clannad, Alton, Danu, Sharon Shannon, Dervish, Van Morrison. These morphed into the 1990s and today, and fused into some new age, punk, and rock styles with Éire, the Pogues, and Sinead O'Connor. Even today, among the subculture concerts of Irish festivals, Highland Games, and Renaissance festivals, you can see many traditional musicians plying their trade across the world. Anywhere that has a strong Celtic influence can be home to the dulcet tones of Irish folk music. Modern incarnations of traditional groups, such as the High Kings or Celtic Woman, have brought a new vivacity to the traditional music and brought new fans to the genre. While they are slick and modernized, they still pay homage to the original roots of the music, the message, and the tales the songs tell to new generations. Classical. Ireland is not the first country which springs to mind when one thinks of classical music. You may think of Austria, perhaps, or Germany, or Italy, but Ireland? Yet, some of the great modern classical, if this is not a contradiction in terms, come from the modern bards of the Emerald Isle. Most people have heard of George Handel, who was actually German and British, yet he chose to premiere his oratorio, Messiah, in Dublin in 1742. The organ on which it was played resides in St. Michan's Church in Dublin. Some Irish-born composers are John Stevenson, William Vincent Wallace, and Aloys Fleischmann. Catherine Hayes was a great singer, as was John McCormick. Today, Sir James Galway is a renowned concert flautist. Harpist Grain Hambley is well known. I saw her in concert in Florida a couple years ago. One production which has done much to advance both Irish dancing and Irish orchestral music is Bill Whalen's River Dance. The singing in the original production was done by Irish group Inuna, Ireland's national choir. This recent reimagining of the traditional mixed with classical music and the step dance tradition of the island has taken the world by storm and made the art into something new and sexy. Popular. The word popular is such a broad category. It can include dance music, new age, rock, country, punk, and any number of fusion styles. However, some of the best music in Ireland can fall under this very wide umbrella. The most successful Irish performers are, without a doubt, U2 and Éire. Other players include Clannad, the Pogues, the Commitments, Van Morrison, Sinead O'Connor, Afro-Celt Sound System, Keela, Thin Lizzy, Rory Gallagher, Krista Berg, the Boomtown Rats, Aslan, the Corrs, Westlife, the Cranberries, Cruachan, Dolores Keane, Mary Black, Sharon Shannon, and Leah Dawn. There are, of course, hundreds more. These are just a few of the more mainstream, well-known bands, and some of my own favorites. The instruments. Did you know Ireland is the only country in the world to use a musical instrument as a national symbol? It's true. The harp is Ireland's symbol, heart, and soul. Do you need more proof the Irish hold music and song near and dear to their national identity? The oldest harp in the country is displayed in the Old Library at Trinity College, just after the Book of Kells exhibit, and well worth a visit. The harp is associated with Ireland music, and for good reason. Their previously mentioned bardic tradition would have been mostly harp in history. However, there are many other instruments, traditional or newly adopted, which help to flesh out the national orchestra of Ireland. Fiddle, of course, is strong in Irish musical tradition, and music from different parts of the country can be identified by how the fiddle music is played in the song. Donegal fiddling is fast and uses a lot of staccato bowing, while Galway fiddling is slower and with more ornamentation. More melody is emphasized in Clare fiddling. Fé dog, the tin whistle or penna whistle, is a simple woodwind, similar to the recorder. Depending on the key, it can be low and haunting or high and flighty. Uilleann pipes or elbow pipes are similar to the great bagpipes of Scotland but is played sitting down. They get their air from pumping a bellows bag with your arm rather than blowing into a pipe. This instrument is unique to Ireland. The notes are still played on the pipe, or chanter, and have 2 full octaves. A modern master of these pipes is Davy Spillane, who can make the pipes sing with sorrow and joy. The bothran is a simple, handheld drum which is usually played with a small chipine, or beater, sometimes with a brush on one end for more variety of sounds. Renaissance festival bands have adopted the small, versatile drum with a vengeance. Other instruments which you don't immediately associate with Irish music may be the Irish bouzouki, the accordion, or the banjo. However, these are very popular instruments in the modern Irish repertoire, especially in certain sections of the country. The dancing. When the music is thumping, who can help but get up and start moving to the beat? Especially after you've had a few pints of the black stuff, right? But it takes years to master true Irish dancing, and competition is worldwide. After the influence of Riverdance has brought it into the modern age, nearly every child of Irish descent wants to take classes. Who are we to deny them? Irish set dancing was probably based on French quadrille dancing, and then later went on to influence American styles such as square dancing, tap, and clogging. Each part of the set dance has a tempo, such as reels, slides, hornpipes, polkas, and jigs. Some dances are called in a style similar to American square dancing. Step dancing, however, is more solitary in performance, and also has very strict rules and forms. The upper body and arms are to remain straight, they dance in a limited space and use the staccato of their steps as part of the rhythm and music of the dance. They can be hard shoe or soft shoe, and each one has its own styles and steps. There are national and international competitions for these dances, and most dancers start at a very young age. While performers originally wore sedate outfits, today they wear outrageously bright costumes with stylized Celtic knotwork and the girls' long, curly wigs. However, you need to know none of this to enjoy the music and dance are real. You can get up and dance when you feel the need. Likely there will be others doing the same. The songs. Now you know the background of the music, you will want to sing along when you get to Ireland, right? Definitely right. Don't feel shy. You probably already know some Irish songs and don't even realize it. Some of the songs I have heard in Irish pubs are sad, some are happy. Some are war songs, some are love songs. Any of these are available online to listen to and learn. Most are on Pandora or Accuradio Celtic stations. You can also hear some good music online from Radio na Gaeltachta, the Irish language broadcast radio station in Ireland. Sad songs, Danny Boy, Carrickfergus, Sally Gardens, For Green Fields, The Parting Glass, Fields of Athenry, Fairy Tale of New York, Clare Island, The Red and Green of Mayo. Happy songs, or at least enthusiastic Rocky Road to Dublin, Courtin' in the Kitchen, I'll Tell Me Ma, The Little Beggar Man, Whiskey in the Jar, Galway Girl. War songs, The Green Fields of France, Arthur McBride, Danny Boy, Wind That Shakes the Barley, A Nation Once Again, Waltzing Matilda, The Foggy Dew. Love songs, Black Velvet Band, Raggle Taggle Gypsy, Black is the Color, Star of the County Down, Galway Girl, Spanish Lady, Red is the Rose, Carrickfergus. Traditional pub tunes, songs you will hear in just about any pub, Wild Rover, Fields of Athenry, Molly Malone, Spancel Hill, All For Me Grog, Johnny Jump Up, Black Velvet Band, Finnegan's Wake. Some are simply tunes, rather than songs, Drowsy Maggie, The Butterfly, Morrison's Jig, Banish Misfortune, Toss the Feathers, and Mary's Wedding. These are staples of most session players and are well recognized. Oddly enough, I have found many of my pub nights had a lot of American songs sprinkled in as well, such as Daydream Believer, Country Roads, West Virginia, and Piano Man. Finding the music. It would be difficult, indeed, to travel through Ireland for any length of time without coming across some of its unique music. However, it is becoming easier to come across prepared performances, specifically made to entertain the tourists, glossy and polished without the authenticity of the real folk of the land. My advice is to go off the beaten path. Get out of Temple Bar in Killarney and go to a local pub which might have a traditional session. A session is a group of local musicians who have gotten together in a pub and just started playing some of the songs they all know. They may have never played together before or may do so every night. They may not even know each other, but they all know the tunes. And they are playing for the joy of playing and entertaining. They aren't being paid by the Irish Tourist Board to provide atmosphere to the Euro-laden tourist, they are having fun. No, the music may not be as high in production value, but it's more honest, and in my opinion, much more enjoyable than the staged stuff. If you are in a city, like Dublin, where tourism is common, it may be more difficult to find the local traditional pub. Your host at the hotel or B&B may give you the standard tourist answer and direct you to a staged performance. However, if you tell them you really are interested in a traditional session, they will likely give you a better recommendation. In some places, you can just walk down the street and follow your ears. Dingle, Doolin, Ardara, Donegal, Kilkenny. I've done this in all these places. You can usually find online listings of what's going on in any given city on websites such as tradconnect.com or thesession.org. Music usually doesn't start until 9 or 10 p.m. each night. However, space is often at a premium. What I've done in the past is find a place which also serves food, eat dinner at the pub, and stay for the music. This doesn't always work well, but it's a good strategy. And of course, by the time the music starts, I've a few pints in me and enjoy the show so much more. We usually find B&Bs which are within staggering distance of a good music pub, if we can, so we don't have to worry about the drive back to our beds. In many towns and villages, this is not a problem. If you have the scenic B&B out on the peat bog, however, it will be, make sure you have a designated driver or can ask the publican to call you a taxi to your place. Music, to the Irish, is their very life's blood. I have yet to find an Irishman who doesn't like some sort of music and have great pride in their bardic past. It is part of the landscape, history and soul of this delightful place. Literature, movies, and shows. Tangentially related to music, or at least in the entertainment genre, are books, movies and television shows. Many have made their home in Ireland. Not only those based on the rich history of the land, but those with some fantasy or literary license. I've given a few of them below. While the scope of this book is not large enough to make an exhaustive list, I've added some of my favorites. If something is both a book and a show or movie, I've only listed it once. Books: 1916 by Morgan Llewellyn, and many more. An Irish Country Doctor by Patrick Taylor. Angela's Ashes by Frank McCourt, and many more. Brooklyn by Colm Toibin. Circle of Friends by Maeve Binchy, and many more. Dubliners by James Joyce, along with many more. Ireland, a novel by Frank Delaney, and many more. P.S. I Love You by Cecilia Ahern. Most of my books are also set in Ireland. The Blackwater Lightship by Colm Toibin. The Princes of Ireland by Edward Rutherford. Movies set in Ireland. The Boys from County Clare. Bloody Sunday. Belfast. Black 47. The Crying Game. The Commitments. Darby O'Gill and the Little People. Dancing at Lughnasadh. Far and Away. The Field. Finian's Rainbow. High Spirits. Into the West. In the Name of the Father. The Last Unicorn. Leap Year. The Magdalene Sisters. Man of Erin. Matchmaker. Michael Collins. My Left Foot. Oh Ma. Undine. Patriot Games. Philomena. The Quiet Man. Ryan's Daughter. The Secret of Kells. The Secret of Roan Inish. Tara Road. Veronica Guerin. Waking Ned Devine. The Wind That Shakes the Barley. Movies filmed in Ireland. Braveheart. The Count of Monte Cristo. Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince. Moby Dick. Once. The Princess Bride. Saving Private Ryan. Star Wars: The Force Awakens / The Last Jedi. Shows set in Ireland. Ballykiss Angel. Derry Girls. The Fall. Father Ted. Moon Boy. Mrs. Brown's Boys. Shows filmed in Ireland. Game of Thrones. Line of Duty. The Tudors. Vikings. The Stunning Facet, Photo Opportunities. How better to capture the moment, the memory, the mood, than to take a photograph of the stunning vista you see before you on your trip to Ireland? One of the eternal draws of this island to millions of tourists are the beautiful sights which are everywhere, and it takes very little time, if any, to travel from one stunning landscape to the next. It's all contained in a compact, green package, ready to share with your envious loved ones. Photographs provide a great service to both the photographer and his friends and family. They record the memory to share and to relive later. There are many times I've looked back on my photos and remembered a scene I had forgotten, relived a memory I had lost. This is also a reason I write my trip reports in such detail. I know my own memory is rather faulty, so I jot down notes every time I sit down to eat during the trip. This helps me write down the narrative later and keeps my memory strong years afterwards. It also helps me realize where I took some of the photographs. The preparation. While there may be a few out there still using film, most people take digital photographs now, and most of those use their phone rather than a camera. If you are still on film, then some of this advice must be adjusted for this fact, so keep this in mind. However, one of the biggest advantages of digital photography is the ability to take as many photographs as you have memory space for, and sort later the ones you wish to spend money on printing. A decent digital camera before you leave deserves a bit of research. I'm not much of a movie taker, but some people prefer video to photographs. If so, much of this will also apply to the video recorder shopping. The equipment. Not everyone needs or wants a professional-grade camera. These can cost over $5,000, and most people don't have this in the budget. Even high-grade amateur cameras, which usually run between $400 and $1,000, are outside most people's budget and desire. However, a decent amateur camera can be gotten for about $150 to $200 and, in my opinion, are well worth the investment. You should, however, do your research and decide which camera is right for you. If you are not planning on printing your photographs in huge sizes for hanging on the wall, your smartphone camera should be sufficient. There is an excellent site at Digital Photograph Review which allows you to choose cameras by feature and compare them side by side. I have used it many times to choose my next piece of equipment. You will need to decide which features are important to you. Since I take a lot of landscape shots, and often from the window of a moving car, long optical zoom and fast shutter speed are very important to me. The ability to shoot in RAW format, which doesn't let the camera do any editing of the image, is also important to me, as I do a lot of post-production manipulation in Photoshop. Is low-light photography important to you, for night shots or party shots? How about close-ups for flowers and other macro photography? Once you know what is important, you are ready to choose a decent camera. By the way, some of the best shots I've taken have been from a point-and-shoot $80 camera. Good equipment is helpful but is not essential. The art is truly in the eye of the artist, not the equipment they use. The accessories. Many cameras come with interchangeable lenses, one for macro, one for zoom, etc. The higher-end professional cameras have this as a matter of course. The point-and-shoots do not, for the most part. The rest of us are in the middle. My camera of choice right now is the Nikon Coolpix P900, which does not have a removable lens. The installed lens can zoom 83x and can do a decent macro shot. I'm happy with this range and would rather not mess with multiple lenses. This is my personal choice, and it may not be yours, so experiment with a few. Go to the store, pick up the camera with all its accessories. Do you want to be hiking up a mountain and through an airport, carrying all this? Or is it worth it to you? Memory, memory, memory. Without it, you are done with your digital diary. Uploading to the cloud might not always be practical. There are several options to making sure you have enough on your trip. Memory sticks of any type are pretty cheap. My option this last trip was simply to take enough sticks to make sure I never ran out of room. I never came close, even after 9,900 photos. I always, however, take at least one more than I think I will need, in case one gets corrupted or lost. Another option I've done in the past is take a laptop and download the card each night. This is fine if you are already planning on taking a laptop, not so much if you'd rather not carry the extra weight. It's worth a note to say if you do, for some reason, accidentally erase the photos from your card, don't despair. Also, don't touch it. Don't try to take more pictures on it. Save it until you can get in touch with an expert. She should be able to get most of the data from it. My friend Carla did this on our trip to Scotland. 1,200 photos erased in the blink of an eye. She held on to it, and when she returned, she was able to get back about 90% of those precious memories she captured with the help of a data recovery specialist. The method. Ireland is truly a land of wonders. It is a small island, but an island which is packed with stunning seascapes, sandy beaches, rocky forts, romantic ruins, and bucolic pastures. When I went to Ireland in June 2013, in 16 days, I had racked up over 9,900 photos. I believe in the theory you take as many photos as you possibly can on site, as you can always sift through them later. different perspectives, different lighting, and different levels, a couple will turn out well. You can't as easily go back and revisit the site. Even the few times I have revisited a place I took a prior photograph, I've discovered the landscape has changed. There is one spot, along the Ring of Kerry, where I took a photo in 2002, again in 2006, and then again in the same spot in 2011. Each time the tide, the weather, and the number of farmhouses in the foreground were different. Each was a very different photograph from the very same spot. In Ireland, you are tempted to stop every 5 minutes on your journey to take a photo of the lamb nursing by the side of the road, the ruin on the hill, the charming, thatched cottage on the road. Go ahead and do it. Do it safely, mind, there are usually small laybys, pullouts, which you can turn into for a very short period. Don't park there, they are for passing, not parking, or driveways you can turn into. This is a country made for photo opportunities, after all. After you've seen your 100th sheep or so, you may be less tempted to stop at the sight of each one. You should keep in mind some basic photography truths, but also keep in mind these are rules, and rules are sometimes meant to be broken. The rule of thirds, composition is more interesting when objects and horizon lines are on the top or bottom third of the picture, or the left/right third. Lines, roads, fences, and other lines lead the eye into a particular spot. Make sure the spot has something interesting. Scale. The mountain photo is great, but how big is it? Take a shot with a flower, tree, or cottage in the foreground to lend a perspective of scale. Weather. The weather in Ireland is part of the landscape. Use it to your advantage. There's a storm coming in, wouldn't a dark cloud look dramatic over the castle? Move your body until you can get the shot lined up right. And then run for the car before the deluge hits. Perspective, more interesting points of view can change the feel of a photo. Shooting straight up on a castle wall or a tree, or down on a flower can work wonders. Action, a standing sheep is lovely, but getting a lamb while it nurses, or a pony while running makes the photo much more interesting. Lighting, sunrise and sunset, storms and clouds, and the ever-present mists of Ireland can make some amazing atmospheric shots. One reason I like staying in one place for several days is to have several opportunities to take photos at different times of the day and night. The locations. While all of Ireland is picturesque and charming, and different people like different things, there are certain places, subjects and areas which stand out as being incredibly photogenic. Cliffs. Ireland is indeed an island, and as such has a long and varied coastline. My favorite place in the world is to be on a sea cliff, looking down at the ocean crashing upon the rocks far below me. I love the mix of sea, wind, and earth, and I feel like I'm standing on the edge of the earth. As a result, I take many of my photographs in such spots. Whether it is the 1972 feet, 601 meters, high, rocky sea cliffs of Slieve League in Donegal, or the fine sandy beach on Slieve Head of the Dingle Peninsula, I love the places where the water meets the land. Water. Lakes and rivers have coastlines as well, and Ireland certainly has its share of picturesque places along its waterways. The River Shannon is the longest river in Ireland and runs through the centre of the country. Many large lakes, such as Lough Derg, are on the Shannon and have stunning scenery to capture. Castles. Ireland has hundreds of castles, ranging from grand palaces which will rent you a room for the night to crumbling ruins which barely hold a full wall against the tide of time. Each is unique and has photographic charm of its own. Some counties are more castle-rich than others, such as counties Dublin, Cork, and Clare, but there are random ruins wherever you go. Some seemingly don't even have a name, it being lost in time. Today, they are just a nuisance to the local farmer who cannot farm this part of the land. Critters. Sheep, cows, goats, donkeys, chickens, and horses. There are more, but these are what I see most of in Ireland. Sheep, and some more sheep. And look, there are some sheep. and a horse. And more sheep. If you are visiting in April or May, you will see adorable lambs running after their mothers, looking for lunch. Cities. Dublin has some beautiful architecture, as does Kilkenny, Galway, Cork, and Belfast, as well as the ubiquitous pubs and statues. There are throngs of people going about their merry day to photograph, and unique sites such as the political murals in Derry or Belfast, the Spanish Arch in Galway, or the Guinness Storehouse in Dublin. Flowers. Ireland has many incredible gardens, ranging from the Japanese gardens in Kildare to the formal gardens in many castles, such as Glenarm or Powerscourt. Most cottages and houses have small, well-tended flower gardens in their homes, and the Irish take pride in these miniature beauties. In April and May, the countryside is awash in yellow gorse, making the landscape look like someone spilled butter across it. Wildflowers are lovely among the green. Cottages. Ah, the charming, thatched cottage. They transport you back to imagined romantic past lives, filled with peat smoke and traditional music. In reality, many of these are becoming impractical, but the Irish realize their draw, and preserve those which are left for the teeming tours of photographers. People. Ever friendly, the people of Ireland are usually game for posing for a photograph. Especially if they are red-haired with freckles, you won't be the first to ask them. Often, after a few pints in a pub, they'll not say no. Do be respectful, though, these folk are trying to go about their day, and some are quite busy with their lives. Stones. Yes, stones. Ireland is a very rocky country. And while the cliffs are made of stone, so are the Neolithic burial sites, the stone circles, the Ogham memorials, the Celtic crosses, and the charming stone walls which crisscross along the western coast of the island. There is great texture and pattern in stones of all types. The west coast, in particular, has many of these, but they dot the entire island. Churches. Ireland is still a Catholic country, but many communities now have two churches, one for the Church of Ireland, Anglican, and one for the Catholic Church. Larger communities may have temples or churches of other faiths, such as Muslim, Jewish, Methodist, etc. Many are also abbeys in ruins since medieval times. Either way, they are an important part of the cultural and physical landscape of the land. Whatever you do, do not be afraid of walking off the beaten path. Climb into the forest, up a rock, into a graveyard, around a stone wall, the possibilities are endless. Of course, be aware of your surroundings and dress appropriately for your adventures. Bring what supplies are required, such as walking sticks, sturdy shoes, water and food, etc. If you are truly adventurous, go on a mountain walk with someone like Nikki at the Antrim Rambler. Keep in mind some sites, like the Ballacrovane Stone in West Cork, or the Kilclooney Dolmen in County Donegal, are only accessible if you walk through someone's yard or field. This is allowed, but do be respectful with the owner's permission, as this may be a working farm or other place of business and do no harm to the property. The aftermath. Inevitably, you get home and look at your photos, and you are disappointed. You remember it being much more breathtaking than the photo could capture. This is, unfortunately, due to the limitations of modern technology. While today's cameras are incredible, they still are not the human eye, and can only capture a thin slice of the wonder we see with our own incredibly complex eye structure. Even the eye cannot truly see all our mind imagines when we look upon a fantasy landscape like Ireland. Our imagination fills in the fairy hills and standing stones with mystery and wonder. Our eye only sees part of this, and the camera captures even less of it. One of the reasons I unapologetically manipulate my photographs is I want to share what my mind saw at the location, not what my eyes saw, or what the camera captured. I want to share this with those who couldn't be there to experience it with me. It's a tall order and sometimes very difficult to accomplish, but I work at it until I am mostly satisfied with my results. I usually print my photos in small format first, to see how they come out in that format. The computer screen sometimes isn't the best portrayal of print photograph. I then order the prints larger to sell. I use a company called White House Custom Copies. You can upload your photos to their server and receive them a couple days later. I've never had a problem with WHCC, and their customer service is top-notch. I've also printed canvas prints with Simply Canvas, and books and calendars at Lulu. There are many ways to share your memories with those you love. The tasty facet, Irish fare. The Irish don't have a fantastic reputation for their cooking, but this has changed in recent years. With cooking schools, such as the now famous Ballimillo House in East Cork and Dunberty House in County Wexford, turning out such notable chefs as Darina Allen, Rachel Allen, Clodagh McKenna, Kevin Dundon, and others like Richard Corrigan, Kevin Thornton, Ian Rankin and others, turning to Ireland's national and local ingredients, supporting local growers, and bringing back country markets. It's no wonder Ireland is fast gaining a reputation as a gourmet food nation. No more is the boil-it-all-day theory of cooking extant. Ireland is rich in tasty, juicy, incredible local ingredients, even wild foods like berries and herbs. If you think I'm the only one of this opinion, look up a show by Anthony Bourdain called The Layover and check out his Dublin episode. Breakfasts. If you are staying at bed and breakfasts, B&Bs, and guest houses, you will likely be served a fantastic breakfast by your hosts. One option is almost always the traditional full Irish breakfast, aka the full Irish, aka the all-day breakfast. This starts off with an egg, usually fried, but it can often be poached or scrambled by choice. Then a bit of fried or grilled bacon is added. This is not like American bacon. This is a cured pork loin, thinly sliced and fried or grilled. They call our type of bacon streaky bacon. Add a couple of link sausage called breakfast sausages. These are usually not very spicy or peppery. Black pudding, a slice of blood sausage made with grains and spices. White pudding, like the black pudding, but without the blood but instead liver. Hash browns or potato cakes. Grilled half tomato. Grilled mushrooms. Items usually available on the sideboard, such as Irish soda bread, whole grain brown bread, traditional toast, various cereals, yogurt, fresh or stewed fruits. Other options include smoked salmon with scrambled eggs, oatmeal, aka porridge, cereal, fruit, poached eggs, and often many of the sideboard items included in the full Irish listed above. In addition, coffee, tea, milk, and often several types of juice are available. Sometimes there are homemade jams and jellies, scones, and in some of the larger guesthouses, pancakes, both Irish style and American style, French toast, and Belgian style waffles as well. And did I mention the Irish soda bread, food of the gods? You will not go away hungry from an Irish breakfast. More likely, you won't be hungry again until 2 or 3 p.m., at which point, most places will no longer be serving lunch, so eat less and have a normal lunchtime, or be prepared with snacks to keep you until dinner. Food. Modern Western civilization is very much a food-oriented culture. We ritualize the need for sustenance so much, it is difficult to find ways to socialize without food or drink as an integral aspect of the event. Parties have drinks, dates have dinner, and family gatherings are for holiday meals or barbecues. We obsess about food, the presentation, the taste, the style, etc. So, let us dedicate some space to the Irish take on the subject. When I go to Ireland, the pub is my usual stop for food, be it lunch or dinner. Part of this is because they are more often open at the times I am hungry, rather than just a few hours for lunch or dinner. Part of this is because I enjoy a pint with my meal. And part is just because I love going to pubs and talking with folks. Traditionally, pubs have been primarily for drinking, with snacks as an afterthought. Pub grub, such as crisps or peanuts, was simply there to help drink sales. A ploughman's lunch, bits of cheese, relish or pickled vegetables, and some bread, is a holdover from this time. This got upgraded to toasted specials and a pint places in the 1950s, still not requiring a full kitchen. Then it expanded to include fish and chips, steak and ale pie, bangers and mash, and on the odd occasion, pasties. Since the 1990s, however, many pubs have become gastropubs and delight in a full menu of gustatory delights which rival the quality and variety of normal restaurants. Even so, there are certain dishes you will find at almost any pub worth its salt in Ireland. Irish stew. Chunks of tender lamb in a cream or chicken broth, with chunks of potato, celery and carrots. I have seen it with tomato on occasion. If there is a national dish of Ireland, this is it. In touristy establishments, beef is substituted for lamb. Fish and chips. Battered and deep-fried, flaky white fish and thick-cut chips, fries. Mussels. Especially on the West Coast, mussels and garlic sauce are a staple. Beef and Guinness stew or pie. A savory dark brown stew with chunks of beef, potato, and carrot. I've also seen it with lamb. Deep-fried mushrooms. Often with an aioli sauce. Goat's cheese salad. Sometimes the cheese is fried, sometimes baked, sometimes cold. Usually served on salad greens and a sweet chutney of some sort, like cranberry compote or peach salsa, and with a balsamic vinaigrette dressing. Soups. Unless it is a stew, it will likely be pureed. Vegetable soup, potato soup, mushroom soup, etc. These are more than likely to come as a creamy puree, so be warned. Ploughman's lunch. Bits of artisan cheeses, some breads, often Irish soda bread, butter, some relish or pickle of various types, and perhaps some pickled onion or a pickled egg. Colcannon. Mashed potato, cabbage, and butter. Bacon and cabbage. Boiled collar bacon or bacon loin, the cabbage is then simmered in the meat liquor until tender. Often potatoes will be cooked in the same liquor, as well as carrots. Shepherd's pie. Mashed potatoes, topped with minced meat, usually lamb, as beef is called cottage pie, and vegetables. Burgers. Yes, lots of burgers. Chicken sandwiches abound, as well. Usually these are made with high-quality beef and lots of topping choices. Sticky toffee pudding. A light sponge cake covered in a butter rum toffee sauce, usually served hot. Banoffee pie. A banana toffee cream pie. If you would rather not eat at the pub, the traditional style restaurants are great, as well. I'm a big fan of seafood, and Ireland has wonderful dishes made with salmon, prawns, mackerel, mussels, and oysters. Their beef is top-notch, but I usually go for the lamb as it is more difficult to find in the US, and it is everywhere on the menu in Ireland, especially in spring and summer months. Their ethnic restaurants tend to be delicious as well. Some of the best Indian and Chinese food I've had has been in Ireland and Scotland. However, I tend to stay away from some dishes. I've been disappointed with Irish attempts at barbecue or Cajun food, for instance. Ironically, national polls for the nation's favorite food have resulted in Thai green curry many times. Street food is also an option. I've had Irish pancakes, 99s, soft ice cream cone with a chocolate flake, a small stick of swirled ribbons of chocolate, fish and chips, and doner kebabs. This has layers of meat, usually lamb, pressed onto a central pole and pressed, cooked, then shaved to put into pita bread with condiments. Or you can get supplies at the grocery store to make food for later or have as a snack on the road. If you are staying in a self-catering place, you will likely have a kitchen and fridge available to make your own creations from groceries bought at the local farmer's market or shop. Drinks. As the Irish have made their mark on the culinary world, they also have a reputation for drinking. Many of the jokes about the Irish involve their penchant for drinking, and then fighting, and then drinking some more. Not drunk is he who from the floor can rise alone and still drink more. But drunk is they, who prostrate lies, without the power to drink or rise. Thomas Love Peacock. An Irishman's true love is his drink. But which one? There are many choices. Whiskey is often a first choice. From the Irish words Uiscí Baha or water of life, whiskey was first distilled by monks over 1,000 years ago and is today popular all over the world. Many of the Irish distilleries are open and available for tours, such as Old Bushmills, Tullamore Dew, Kilbeggan, and Jameson's. They can be blended or single malt and served straight, on the rocks, or mixed with something, though most Irishmen will look at you askance for the latter request. Guinness, or the black stuff, is a heavy porter or stout beer started by Sir Arthur Guinness in 1759. The brewery in Dublin has a great tourist track through to the top, where you can get a free pint at the source. It is available on tap everywhere, and you can get it in half pints if you don't feel up to the full pint. Other beers are available, of course, such as Murphy's and Beamish, both stouts brewed exclusively in Cork City, Smithwick's or Kilkenny. You can also get all sorts of imports, from Budweiser to Grolsch. And don't forget micro or artisan breweries such as Kinsale Brewery, Biddy Early, Bunn Brewery, Porterhouse Brewing Company, etc. Cider is my personal favorite, as I don't care for the bitter taste of beers and am too much of a lightweight for whiskey. Cider, aka hard cider, an apple-based alcoholic, carbonated drink, most often served in bottles in Irish pubs. The most common brand is Bulmers, or Magners in Northern Ireland. Cream liquor, the most commonly known being Baileys, are usually available at pubs. There are many brands which are, in my opinion, better than Baileys, such as Carolyn's or Columba. They are often served on ice or in as a shot in coffee. Mead's favor has waned since Viking times but is resurging in popularity. It is a very sweet honey wine, and while some are dry, most are much sweeter than the sweet white wines. Poitin is a distilled spirit made from potatoes and is basically Irish moonshine. It was made illegally for centuries up in the mountains and down secret ravines to avoid the liquor duties. The result was closest to pure spirit. Today, it is being made commercially and legally available, though remarkably lower in alcohol content. Be warned, though, it is still quite potent. Irish coffee was, I thought, an American invention like corned beef. However, it was actually invented by an Irish chef after World War II at the first transatlantic airport in Foynes, County Limerick. The drink combines a spoon of sugar and shot of whiskey poured into a cup, dark roast coffee poured gently into it. Then thick double cream poured over the back of a spoon onto the top of the coffee. Please continue to part 3 to continue listening to this audiobook.